welcome back. I'm Gillian McCabe. I'm a clinical specialist pelvic health physiotherapist here in South Wales, and I'm here again with Julie Bond, pelvic health specialist physiotherapist again in South Wales. And we're going to talk to you today about constipation.
We are. So Jill, what is constipation?
Well, basically it's when you don't poo often enough. That's the best way of describing it.
What is often enough? How much should we be pooing?
There's quite a range. You don't have to poo every day. We're looking at 3 times a day to 3 times a week as being the natural rhythm of things, and it's got to be a rhythm that you're used to. So there are people out there who might not go every day. You might go one day, you might go 3 times one day, and then you might not go for a couple of days. It's whatever is your normal rhythm. But if you go in less than 3 times in a week, there's likely to be a bit of a problem there.
Getting a bit bunged up.
Yeah, we've both probably seen people who are going very irregularly. I think probably once a fortnight, once a week, something like that. And you can get very, very used to that, but it can build up into lots of different problems that you can have with your pelvic floor, your bladder, your back, your pelvis, all sorts of different problems. So it's really important to get it sorted out.
Yes.
And you'll find from a lot of the videos that we're putting on that we always come back to constipation and deal with it.
Yeah, it's the number one thing that we like to get sorted as quick as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you've got IBS as well, one little caveat, doesn't mean that we can't sort that out as well. So if you're getting really mixed bowels, so you're going really, really loose one day and then getting really, really constipated for a week or 2, that's something we can look at as well, and we'll look at that in a different video, okay? But don't fear, we need to sort your bowels out. Bowels are the key to everything.
The way I tend to describe constipation in terms of what's going on inside, obviously we know what's going on outside. You're not going to the loo often enough, and you don't feel that need to go as often as maybe you should do. But if you imagine having a shopping bag, one of those 10p bags from Tesco's, and you pop in different items in there from your shop. Now obviously you're going to get to the point where that bag is pretty much full, okay, and you might have heavy things in there, you might have light things in there, but it's full. If you're not emptying that bag and you still try and put more items in there, that bag is going to start to stretch and to strain, and it's going to become bigger until obviously that stretching is going to be something that it can't cope with. So if you're thinking about your rectum as a tube inside your body that attaches then onto your back passage where you would empty your bowels from, if that is constantly being pushed and stretched and pulled in different directions, that is going to give you symptoms, and that's going to have knock-on impacts onto the vaginal walls, to the bladder, to the pelvis. The tailbone is just behind it as well. Everything's very closely related. And then you think of this pelvic floor sitting underneath it, that's having to take the weight of that stool that's been sitting there for however long. So it's really important to try and deal with that and empty it regularly so that you're not overstraining the walls of your rectum.
Absolutely.
So what can we do about constipation then?
We can do lots, but first of all we need to drink lots of fluid. It's important that you get about 1,500 ml, so 1.5 litres, which is about 5 to 6 big mugs of fluid a day. And that's just to let your heart beat, to let your lungs breathe, your muscles work, your brain work. If you don't get enough fluid, then your body's going to be dehydrated, and it's going to try and take more fluid out of the food that you've eaten as it moves around in your bowels. So the food, as it moves around, it's drier and drier and harder, and that's hard for the bowel to process. It's hard for it to move around, and it becomes quite lumpy, hard, that kind of rabbit dropping type stool. It's really hard to pass. If you're well hydrated at all times, it doesn't matter if it takes water out of the bowel, because you've always got something to back up. So we always say at least 1,500 mils, aiming for about 2 litres, which to most people, if you take a water bottle with you to work or wherever, try and have a bottle in the morning, a bottle in the afternoon. If you don't get all the way through it, a cup of tea here and there, a bit of squash, whatever it might be, just to try and aim to keep well hydrated. And to be honest, that tends to be a big challenge for most of our constipated clients.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Quite often you don't drink very much at all, and you can feel really dehydrated. But you'd also be surprised how quickly that can make a difference. If you start drinking 1,500 mils to 2 litres today and did that every day, you might be coming back within a week saying, actually, no, I'm going much more regularly and it's much easier to pass, it's much smoother. If you have a look on the internet and look at Bristol's stool chart, you want to be around type 3 to type 4. That's enough fluid in there. Yeah. That would be the ideal stool without
what we call the Goldilocks poo to my clients. So it's not too hard and not too soft.
Yeah, you definitely don't want rabbit droppings.
No. They're too difficult to pass, aren't they? They require a lot of pressure. You're going to stretch your pelvic floor, you're going to stretch that plastic bag, new bowel, basically thinking about that. We're going to stretch structures a bit too much.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's fluid. What about what we eat? Because we can change that and we can really help with that, can't we?
Something that I always say to any of my clients is have a trial of flaxseed.
Yeah.
And ideally golden flaxseed, you were saying?
Yeah.
Tastes better?
Yeah.
So you can
It's
have
nice
it dry and you can mix it in with your cereal, so your muesli or your granola or whatever in the morning. Some of my clients soak it overnight, so you put it in a small glass, fill it up with water, and then that can mix into porridge quite nicely, or you can down it, maybe not so nice.
No.
But that works through into your system. It's a really good form of fibre, and it helps to bind together with water molecules. So if you're drinking plenty there as well, it'll stop your stool from getting dehydrated and then obviously becoming hard and difficult to pass.
Yeah, so that's a really good tip. Make sure that you're getting lots of fibre. Flaxseed's a good place to start. Another thing that I hear quite often is ladies that have had babies finding it difficult to find the time to make food and to make food with good quality fibre in it. So one of the quick postnatal diets that we used to promote quite a lot is 2 pieces of brown toast and half a tin of beans. If you do beans on toast, this is shows how long I've been doing this. It gives you 14 milligrams of fibre in that bit of food, that meal, and you need about 18 milligrams. So you're only a few milligrams off to be able to achieve a Goldilocks poo. And honestly, if you haven't got time to do anything, just microwave some beans, make some toast. It's pretty healthy, it's full of protein, as long as you're okay eating beans. But you'll find that your stools start moving faster and easier, and it's not so, it's much more comfortable. Okay, so that's food and fibre. There's a lot of other places we can get fibre as well that are on there.
So there's lots of fruit and veg.
Yeah.
You've got to be careful, obviously, if you've got IBS, maybe we'll do another video about IBS.
Yeah.
So the things that you can tolerate and not tolerate. And if you've got IBS and you've had it for a while, you'll know certain food groups that you've got to keep away from.
Yeah.
But plenty of fruit and veg with your flaxseed or other forms of fibre, plus your fluid, would be a really good starting point.
Fibre is not bran flakes. Fibre is a very soluble compound. There's actually quite a lot of fibre in breast milk, which makes people feel a bit strange because they think that fibre should look a bit like Weetabix. So bran flakes, if you're constipated and trying to get lots of fibre in your diet, eating bran flakes is not going to help. That tends to actually bind you a bit more in many cases if you don't drink enough. So sprinkling a bit of bran is useful on porridge, on something else, but not purely bran flakes or Weetabix.
So you might want to avoid foods that bind you up as well. So things like high protein foods can, if it's the wrong balance. Obviously you've got your eat well plate and you want to have a good balanced diet. But if you're having a lot of dairy, a lot of eggs, for instance, a lot of protein, a lot of red meats, you might find even bananas will clog things up a little bit if you have a lot of them. So it's worthwhile just making sure that you know what foods are going to help you and what foods you might find they're going to fight against your desire to get your bowels more regular.
Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is exercise.
So get up and move around is the main point there.
Yeah.
A lot of us are very sedentary. You might have an office-based job where you sat down most of the day. Maybe you're not big into exercise. But even just going out for a 30-minute walk per day or 2 15-minute walks, park a little bit further away from work and walk into work, does wonders.
Walk at lunchtime.
Yeah. You can fit it in. There's 24 hours in a day. And you can definitely fit in some form of exercise. Even just always using the stairs in work, if you tend to use the lift. Start off with one flight and then build up the number of flights, depending on how big your building is, obviously. But just going out for a walk at lunchtime make a massive difference.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're walking around, the muscles in your tummy are squeezing. And a bit like when you're trying to get the end of a bit of toothpaste out of the tube, the more that you can kind of wriggle and squeeze things by moving, by walking, by sitting up, by getting down. If you are a gym goer, go to the gym, you'd have to run or anything, just get moving in some way. You'll find that your bowels move more often and it really helps. So get up, don't be chair-shaped.
So what about drugs then? Lots of people are going to be taking some sort of, or have tried some sort of laxative or stimulant or...
Yeah, well, what we would say with this is obviously as physios we don't prescribe medications and you've got to talk to your GP about what's safe and what's good for you. But a lot of people say, oh, I've tried laxatives, they don't work for me, I was on this, I was on that. What I'd say is go back and talk to your GP if you're having a severe constipation and you really feel that you need to be moving and very uncomfortable. Because drugs don't work in isolation. There are 2 types of drugs. As I say to my clients, there are movers that move the stool round if your bowel is slow and sluggish, and there are squishifiers that make what comes out a little bit softer.
Very technical term there from Julie, we like that.
Yeah, movers and squishifiers. And you often need a combination of both of them. And so people will come to us and say, oh, I've been on Fibergel, I've been on Movalax, I've been on Movacol, I've been on lots of different things.
Volcalax.
Yeah, and they don't work, but they do when you use them in the right combinations with a bit of exercise and under good GP guidance. So feel a bit more informed. If you want to talk to us about that, that's fine. But I'd go back and have that conversation with your GP and say, this drug that I'm on, is it a mover or a squishifier? And could I use it with a different laxative together to get my bowels moving into a better habit, and then I can make that habit my normal with all the tips that we've given you, and you won't maybe need to rely on the drugs so much, but certainly they can be very, very helpful in starting to get you moving.
And those squishifiers, if I'm using the technical term, thank you for that, new word of the day.
Squishifier.
The squishifiers rely on you drinking enough fluid.
Yeah.
So a squishifier won't work if you're not drinking enough fluid. So you're basically making that drug ineffective. In one sense, if you're not drinking enough.
And that's what most people find, is that they don't like drinking a whole half a pint glass with their Fibergel when they're not someone that likes drinking anyway, but that comes back to having enough fluid. So they find drinking that down a bit of a challenge. They have it with less water, and then it binds them, it doesn't do anything good.
Yeah. So make sure you're using them correctly, and it's a bit of a balancing act, and you do need to be very open with your GP and talk it through and make sure that you're on the right combination, I think is the
combination of
overview there.
medications is always the way forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about is how you have a poo. We're only going to do it quickly because there is actually a bit of a better film that we're going to do all about how to go to the toilet properly. But Jill is going to very nicely demonstrate how we should be sitting on the toilet. So it's important to sit in the right position. Most of us sit back and we do this, and we use our tummy muscles and we squeeze and we try and get things to move. Now, with constipation, you've seen pelvic floor diagrams that we've done in previous videos, but also that thinking about that full plastic bag, we don't want to press it really hard, really fast and stretch the walls, because all of that wonderful work that you've done on your pelvic floor is out the window for that day if you then go and stretch things and make them sore. So we want it to move very gently. So the first thing to do, we're not going to go into too much detail, is to get your feet up. So we've got a small lovely box here. You can get a stool, you can get a squatty potty, they're fantastic.
Toilet rolls turned on their end sometimes will work.
Fantastic.
If you haven't got anything available.
If you're out and about and you're at someone else's house, or you're in a restaurant or a pub or something, trying to find the pipes that are around the edge to put your feet up on. But you want them rested with your knees higher than your hips, and your body coming forwards, and you're going to take some deep breaths, but we'll go into detail about that in another film. But just make sure to start off with that you might find it a bit more comfortable if you go to the toilet with your knees up on something. Okay, so that's all we're going to talk about today about constipation. We hope that you found it useful, and feel free to get in touch with us on Twitter or Facebook if you want to discuss about anything more in detail. Obviously, check with your GP about the medications you want to be taking. But really, constipation is something you can manage very easily and effectively if you go through these steps. I think there is yet anyone I can think of in the last however many years that hasn't managed to change how their bowels feel and how in control of their bowels they feel by doing these simple steps.
It's worth giving them a go. Definitely worth giving them a go.
Good. So, thank you for listening to us, and we'll catch you again soon.
Bye.